Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video about hacking yourself to pieces, popping pagers, breaking supply chains, and cyber severing everything. So, like, what the hell does that even mean? Um, but also, what is we looking at? This is also doubles as Silver Spook, Neofeud 2, sneak peeks, Neofeud 2 inside the game footage, which I've been working on this for the last 7 years in this week. So this is like some of the latest stuff, but it's also appropriate to the present moment and the present situation and the present video essay that I find myself making. And obviously the most pertinent topic is that relating to what's happening right now is the exploding the things that how do I say this without this thing getting in trouble? The pagers, those beepies and walkie talkies and cell phones and solar panels, cars of all kinds, your phone, your iPhone, your Samsung, your Motorola, your Nest, your refrigerator, your microwave, your baby monitor, most toys, your laptop, your desktop, your printer, everything. Everything in your house is a popping. I don't know if you can say that other word. They're all dangerous devices that could detonate your house anywhere on the earth at any minute. And you on your person, pro tip: just don't buy any Apple, Samsung phones. Don't buy any Galaxy. Don't buy any don't buy any Fords. Don't buy any Teslas. They could explode at any second. Just don't buy any of them. That's the solution. There you go. Problem solved. Self-hacking. Cybersecurity restored. Just don't buy any products that have any smart enablement, any computer chips. You can buy Huawei though. That's it. You can buy Huawei stuff made in mainland China, other than Iran and Russia. But anything outside of that, if you buy any Western product, you're cooked. You're cooked by 0.25 milligrams of high explosives, or just the lithium batteries that explode in them, that could be made to explode by simple overheating. Anyways, but yeah, wasn't even talk about that. By now you probably know, you've heard on the news. I'm not going to repeat the news stories. You've probably seen it somewhere, right? What has happened? Depending on which news source you go to, you're gonna get different narratives, obviously, about what exactly happened. But you get the gist of it, which is that there has been a large scale event, a large scale attack, where thousands of pagers simultaneously exploded, causing thousands of over 3,000 injuries, and not just pagers and other devices, causing thousands of injuries, losses of limbs, eyes, several dead. I think it's like less than 100, but it's like several dead, children also dead. So that was a big it was a very actually there have been bigger, obviously. Every day more people are unalived by the entity that did the pager attack, let's just say. So I'm trying to think about how to say this. Too much, probably. So people are thinking about how to people are thinking about what that means. I see many people have said right after it happened. I just want to say I called it like way before, like immediately after it happened. I was like, the entire Western world is cooked. That's the number one takeaway. Absolutely, they already were, but they just high speed micro. They're like cooked to like a 25,000 watt microwave cooked. Because if you cook on a in an oven at 200 degrees, it'll take a while. If you have a super high powered microwave, right, you could cook real fast. So that's what happened. The supply chains are cooked. That's basically what's going. How it started, how it's going. Okay, in case you don't know, if you have an Apple phone, you have a Samsung phone. If you have a Facebook, a Google, Amazon device that runs those, we already know everything's cooked with CrowdStrike. So Windows Western operating systems are all cooked. If you have any Western electronics device, anything made in Taiwan, unfortunately, that's under the U.S. control, absolutely cooked, absolutely fire starting, explosive. All Western planes could explode. I mean, well, they probably won't explode their own plane, but your device could explode on the plane while you're on it. So basically, yeah, it's done. It's already unraveling. I just saw a report that all like Huawei, BYD, the other big mainland Chinese, like not non-US controlled Taiwan Chinese companies are seeing they can't even fill this. The orders have like doubled, tripled. It's like unprecedented. Like this is already unraveling. I have many videos, obviously, about the de-Westification. I have several videos on de-Westification, the collapse of end of Western domination, the mental decline of empire. That's just the psychological dimensions of that. U.S. military draft and the military decline of empire, and the collective colonial capitalist West, and the U.S. hegemony. I've got lots of videos about all that in the last several years, right? The decline of U.S. democracy. So this is kind of a culmination. This is like also recently, right? We did have the very big. Recently, we also had the very big event of a accidental, right? CrowdStrike was a big accidental mass mega failure, mega Western tech failure, right? That already caused a huge acceleration of the already existing trend of the decline of the collective colonial capitalist, Euroid West, and the rise of the multipolar world, of the global majority, of the formerly colonized world, the global South, the East, and many led by many socialist countries and rising former colonies of the West. And so the CrowdStrike accelerated that trend when simultaneously millions, billions of devices, right? Grocery store check. Remember this? Grocery store check. I know the Western media and Western, social media, Western populations have like 0.357 second memories, but slightly shorter than a gnat. But in case you forgot, CrowdStrike just happened like less than 3 months ago, and it was a planet-wide outage of Korean hospitals, Australian airports couldn't take off, right? The entire West could not get their planes off the ground. China was unaffected. Russia was unaffected. And many other countries that were not on Western software, Western operating systems, right? Like Microsoft Windows. And this particular corporate subversion of Windows that had this massive blue screen of death. General protection fall. It got besotted, as they would say. And so, and that was a big hit to the entire U.S. Western hegemony, because it, obviously people said at any time because and the thing with this one was a failure for sure. It was because it has no material benefit to the United States, to global transnational capitalist corporations, to military industrial complex. There's no benefit to all the usual suspects, the G7. It only has negative impact, so that's why it's definitely a mistake. Where there was they pushed an update to their, in case you forgot, just a quick recap, they pushed and the company forced through an update sooner than they probably should have, than they definitely should have, on a Friday, the worst possible day to push it through, because then people are out on the weekend. It didn't do basic bug checking, QA. It didn't do basic software development practices. So that's an abject failure at CrowdStrike, one of the biggest, and also supported the Democratic. They're the propagators of RussiaGate and horrible, which is proven to be false. But we're back on that again because the West has a memory of 0.125 seconds and dropping every second. It's kind of like gravity. The Western attention span drops by 0.1 seconds every second until it goes into negative territory, and then it starts believing lies before they're even spoken. That's the singularity, is when the Westoid brain begins to believe, State Department talking points before they even spouted, right? Before the deep state or the blob or whatever, the most horrible clowns that run the Western world, before they can even say the propaganda, people already believe it. That's the trick. That's the real time travel. Can we time travel CNN talking points straight into USanian and British minds before, right? Even what if before Victoria Nuland conceives of the new narrative for how to maintain imperialist proxy war and kill millions of people, and be like online Neofeud scams to take the lack of the barely existing discretionary spending of Americans and liberal and progressive people in the West, and throw it into the pockets of people who want to buy drugs in Ukraine. It just came out that all those Neofeud dogs, there's like millions and billions of, potentially billions of dollars, would just like lift it straight out of people's pockets. That wasn't even going to the front line, because that's the anyway. Let me get back on the track. So anyway, long story short, so the ability for the CrowdStrike, the ability for the U.S. to maintain its software hegemony, its technological operating system, right? To keep control. I always come back to this. That's why I used to always end the streams with like, while we have access to the Death Star satellites, follow me on Twitter at SilverSpookGuy. While we have access to the Death Star satellites, don't forget to watch my YouTube stream. While I have access to the Death Star satellites, you can also check out our live alternate platform on Twitch. While we have access to the Death Star satellites, you can also look me up on what's the other one? Facebook, or Instagram, right? The only real edge that the imperial world, that the empire has had, has been really the narrative. It's really forever, right? That entire, it's this ability to brainwash people, to convince people, whether that was the Greek orator, brainwash people into a patriarchal Hellenic supremacist misogynistic system of then Greek oligarchic capitalism, and then empire under Alexander. The Roman orators, and then they also had some other forms of, they had more advanced technology, like they had some forms of print, right? Now they didn't have the printing press yet, because the Chinese and the Koreans had not invented it yet, and then to steal. But they had print, and they had larger empires. But then the British and French empires were under print, newsprint. You could brainwash a lot more people faster than one priest or pastor or one orator, right? Or one speaking to an auditorium, or a priest speaking to a congregation. I mean, that was historically the way of brainwashing mass numbers of people, right? The opiate of the masses. But once you had the printing press, you could print out all of this material and then just distribute it around in a newspaper, and even in the books, history books. These are brainwashing material. Right, and the now you had Bibles, but you have to make sure you had a priest or pastor to reinterpret the Bible properly for the people, to keep that the new programming installed into the masses to make sure that they keep dying for their wealthy aristocratic ruling classes. But then once you get to the point of television, right, the radio and then TV and film, right? That's why the United States that supersedes the British, French, Euro, like kind of splintered imperial structure. The United States becomes the new TV and movie empire, but now we have the digital gaming cyber empire, right? Where the cell phone, right, the iPhone, the Samsung Galaxy, the smart tablet, right, that's the number one way in which people receive information, image, video, quote unquote content, right? So that's like the latest in the brainwashing, weaponized information distribution and material distribution medium, as Marshall McLuhan would say. The medium is the massacre. The medium is the mass brainwashing. It's not really the message. But anyway, so long story short, so to maintain your control over the masses through the modern 21st century mediums, right, through the internet, through the airwaves, right, through wireless, right, through the digital communications that we have, right, the digital devices that we use. People need to trust and believe in their devices, right, and they have to be using your devices. This is why the U.S. is trying to stop China from getting Huawei, getting BYD electric vehicles. Well, that's not necessarily communication, but it's related. We're trying to stop Huawei, trying to stop any competing tech companies, non-Western tech companies that it cannot control from getting devices in their hands. Like Canada, Holly's family had Huawei phones. They were really fast, amazing cameras. They're better, cheaper phones than Samsung iPhone phones, like 6 years ago in Canada. And then the next year, the phones were banned. The same thing happened in Europe. Why did that happen, right? For all the reasons that we're saying, right? Losing. If people stop buying American and U.S. and Taiwanese, specifically U.S. controlled Taiwanese made phones with U.S. TSMC controlled semiconductors, or South Korean, which is U.S. controlled, because South Korea is a vassal. Its military is completely under the leash of the United States military. Japan as well, right? So anything Korea, Japan, Taiwan made, like the Motorola pagers, these Apollo pagers, right? They were at least they were branded Taiwan apparently, like they're made in Hungary, which is part of how they like circumvent the supply chain. It doesn't matter though, because it's already harmed all U.S. controlled Taiwanese manufacturing. But and obviously Windows, obviously. All the FANG, right? Facebook, Amazon, etc. This company that we're streaming from, all of their products, their phones, the software and the hardware, right? When CrowdStrike happened, right? That massively pushed people to rethink why, because billions and knock on potentially trillions of dollars of revenue was lost. Because people died, right? People died in hospitals. Their sleep apnea, their not sleep apnea, but like their CPAP machines, their life support equipment in hospitals like shut down in some places. Like there's not like this is the exact number, but like it caused catastrophic damage. Just the traffic slowdowns. There were accidents. There were all. Remember there were stampedes in there was like massive there were stampedes because people were freaking out and there was a lot of panic when everything went down, and airports were backed up for days and days. Doctors, heart surgeons couldn't get to their appointments. Grocery stores had to go back to like the Stone Age, using using the barter system, where they had to basically use like paper checks or paper money. And many areas don't even have access to that. So it was catastrophic in terms of economic losses, and people have been and are rethinking that, especially in the global majority, which is where the vast majority of all of the economic development, all of the population, where all the resources and where the future is. It's not in the United States, not in the global north, it's not in Europe already. But the speed at which the future is arriving, right, accelerated because of CrowdStrike. Anyway, and so now, any phone that you have, everywhere I turn, right, I see, no matter if it's people, like if it's a programmer in Britain, like a liberal programmer in Britain, a right winger, Fox News watching podcaster dude in Alabama, just some random 20 something leftist on the Discord. I look around in the world, people even definitely people in Africa, and definitely people in the Arab world, right? They're like immediately, we got to get everything out of no US, no Japanese, no Taiwanese, no Korean, no European made, right? What they call like the free countries. Anywhere on the map of the UN votes on free countries, and anybody that votes with the US and the UN, every one of those countries got to be out. No product. Like I've seen a shipping order, right, that said from like Iran, and I think it's not Lebanon even. It's Iran and African countries. The shipping orders all read like there must be zero. All products must be made in the Chinese mainland, in this phone or this technological device. Every single piece of this phone has to be made and assembled in this Chinese mainland, not in Taiwan. Like Huawei has to make it, or one of the other. There's many tech companies in China that are bigger than every Western tech company already, but it has to be made in mainland China, and there can be zero stopovers. There can be zero middlemen, right? So it has to go straight from mainland China, straight to Iran, straight from mainland China, straight to this Arab or African or Asian country. Nobody wants anything at all anywhere in. No Europe stopover. No like final assembly in Germany. Hungary is where the Apollo was made, and there was a ISRAELE right, there was a Isn't Real affiliated CEO who was educated in Britain, that was managing the Hungarian company that manufactured these exploding pagers, right? This particular batch of them, right? So anything anywhere in the West, right? Because that's all in Europe. Anything at all in the West is permanently tainted as a death sentence. It's always been a spy mechanism, right? That's why it's idiotic, stupid, and self-destructive. That's part of the hacking yourself to pieces, right? Is that when you do this, because they've done this, they have the U.S. and the collective West, the capitalist, colonialist, white supremacist world, has now tainted every single one of their products, as weapons that an unhinged person, right, an unhinged neocon, neoliberal, just some person in the deep state, somebody in ISRAEL who when you say free Palestine, every time, and most of the world is for free Palestine, by the way, right? So I don't know the exact numbers, but it's the majority of the global South. That's already most of the people. Even in the U.S. and the West, the U.S. and Europe, the average person is for free Palestine. Even a lot of right wing, like people who would vote Republican, who we call Republican or conservative, they're also seeing this stuff from different angles, from different sources, not always the same source, but they're seeing what's happening, and they also are like, so the majority of the population, even in the United States and the collective West, is for free Palestine. If you say free Palestine, right, Netanyahu could blow you up at any second. Let me say that again. If you go to a Palestine protest, right? So everybody is like, I don't want, everybody, even in the United States. That's why but this is going to be interesting, right? How will the United States because people are gonna be trying to get whatever kind of phones and devices they can possibly get. What people are doing is people are not bringing phones. That's why I'm saying everywhere I look, people are like putting their phones down. I'm not gonna buy a new phone. I'm not gonna go near my phone. I'm gonna use it a lot less. Trillions of dollars have been spent. Trillions of dollars have been spent by the big techs, right? Apple, again, all the FANG companies, Apple, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Instagram, all these the biggest Western companies, right? Trillions of dollars have been spent trying to convince people that having this, glass and metal and semiconductor filled device called a phone, right, or a tablet or a watch, the Google Watch, to convince you to have that on you at all times and be using it at all times, right? But now people are saying, I got to get far away from my device. I don't really want to buy another device. I mean, there's so many reasons not to buy Apple, not just because of the horrible blood-covered coltan copper, cobalt, and all the other resources in Sudan, Congo, that U.S. and Western and ISRAELEI billionaires and colonialists are exploiting the slavery, child slavery, to get those minerals. So that's the one reason not to get them. But now your life could depend on it. You having an eye or a hand, right? So this is the thing, right? And even if you're not going to a Palestine protest, right? Anybody who doesn't like you in the ruling imperial capitalist classes, right, of the I think it was a Russian Dmitry Orlov described it as like the bifurcated brain of the U.S. has one brain split in half. One half of the brain is APAC, and the other half of the brain is like transnational mega big tech corporations. And they're now the U.S. brain is like Keanu Reeves's mind in A Scanner Darkly, right? It's like it's a bicameral mind that split itself in half, right? With this action, right, breaks that all in half, right? Because the biggest tech, right? So with CrowdStrike, that was the U.S. hacking itself to pieces, right? By not hacking, but just by catastrophically blundering the C++ code, or C or C+ code in its so-called antivirus, right, stability ensuring CrowdStrike system. It actually destabilized everything, right, and it wrecked itself. But this is not an accident, right? This is the two halves of America's mind, right? The one that puts the single largest lobby that takes, what it is basically it's a lot of the entire West is a tumor, and then there's a sub-tumor growing out of that is the military-industrial complex, and the biggest chunk of that is the isn't real APAC complex, and that complex, right, is kind of wagging all the other sub-tumors behind it, in part because just of its level of rabidness, right, in part, and in part because of who specifically it is and the importance that it has, and the enabling that the United States empire has spoiled ISRAELIS with, right? So it's but they are at conflicting final goals. They work together, but now they're they're hitting each other, which is, in one sense, it's like, that's great. They should all destroy each other. Right? And the sooner that we get rid of the capitalist, colonialist, imperialist system and military-industrial complex, the better, right? So in one sense, like, it's terrible that many people suffered and died, and the damage is still mounting. Of course, obviously, there's bombing happening today. There's big attacks in the Levant region, let's just say, especially in the Lebanon region right now, and also in the northern ISRAEL. But the bigger knock-on impact is, this is gonna be a massive it's gonna be more catastrophic, I think, than even CrowdStrike. Even in the immediate CrowdStrike, accidentally hacking yourself, right? Accidentally cyber attacking yourself, right? By failing to do basic, like kindergarten level programming, debugging, right? And basic like they didn't even test the CrowdStrike. They didn't even like do an in-house test on the computers. They just forced that thing through. Because if they had done a test on like have like a like a Dell machine, have an HP, right? Have a simulated corporate server in the CrowdStrike office and just test it. Because if they had tested it, it would have caught the bug, right? But CrowdStrike is a massive $1 billion+ company, right? That works for the Democratic. They work for the Democratic Party to help get Hillary Clinton elected, except it failed, right? That has been part of the the Western imperial complex propagating propaganda, and then making money, right, as part of that system, right, providing almost no value, not like actually cause because CrowdStrike warned that Russia or China or Iran or North Korea could hack America and cause catastrophic damage due to like Leave the World Behind style, like that movie, airline, right, hospital and infrastructural and other telecommunications shutdowns, right, like mass electronics system collapse, right? And then CrowdStrike did that to the entire West, not just the U.S., the entire anywhere that used those Microsoft, which is right most of the U.S. and what is called the West and its vassals. India also. India is the biggest country that would have had the most damage, as over 1.4 billion people suffered this catastrophic failures. So India is safe because most of India, because it is vassalized to the capitalist colonialist West, is not very technologically advanced, and half of the country is starving, unlike China. So anyways, which is more advanced and isn't vassalized. And that's why you have to get a Chinese phone, not an India-made iPhone. Chinese mainland phone. So anyways, hacking yourself to pieces. So I mean, the big takeaway, I think, is that this is going to have huge knock-on effects. You're not like, we can't really say though. What is happening in the world right now is unprecedented. It's like I would argue it's like multi-millennia unprecedented. It's at least 500-year unprecedented. 500 years. It is a once in 500 years or more event, which is the entire planet is rearranging, right? Is rearranging its where the fulcrums of power are, where the centers of power are, where the economic, the military, the soft power, the cultural, the civilizational, like heart of the human species and the whole planet, by extension, is. And it's not in the United States. It's not in any Western European country anymore, right? Or it's in the process of shifting away. So as that happens, right, because it's so unprecedented, right? Obviously, advanced technological civilization didn't exist 500 years ago. Or in the beginning of the colonial era, when the Europeans began subjugating, large swaths, all continents, maybe save Antarctica. Although the Antarctic penguins would like to submit their grievances for reparations of the loss of vast quantities of their sea ice and their biome and their planetary climate. So maybe Antarctica could also be counted as colonized, and Happy Feet is increasingly unhappy. But I mean, at any rate, right? So so because it's an unprecedented level of, the world is in an unprecedented situation. We can't say that, oh, well, they wouldn't just blow up American zones. No, the United States has already assassinated whistleblowers. Boeing has assassinated whistleblowers, and America said fine. There have been two president attempted assassinations, right, on just one candidate, right? That there have been assassinations and assassination attempts historically, but another thing is that they both failed, which says Americans are unable. Not only are Americans unable to program their CrowdStrike properly, right? Not only are Americans unable to, where did my CrowdStrike go? Not only are Americans unable to program their software properly, right, or use their weaponize their mass mind control weapon that is all your phones and devices being made by their companies, their corporations, right? Right. That's the failure of the pager attack is a failure because that would have been much more damaging in an actual war or like in a full scale war between Lebanon and Israel. The pager attack, the United States, I think the U.S. Ruling class would have loved to blow up everybody all at once. Like the U.S. could blow up all black, indigenous, left, pro-Palestine activists all at once, right? Like 10 million people who ever said free Palestine or was ever in a union or a socialist or communist or anarchist organization, all of Antifa just explode at once, right? That would have been more effective for America because that's what America wants, is to get rid of the left of its own place and maybe get rid of, all of Europe's all at once, right? All of Europe, all of the U.S., all of South Korea's anti-war activists, all of Japan's Japanese waving free Palestine. The United States, I think the U.S. ruling class would have loved to blow up all their own citizens that are saying anything true, like all journalists, like Scott Ritter, Abby Martin, Lee Camp, right, Daniel Hale. Any whistleblower all at once explode, and that would be a major threat, right? But now it's too late because now nobody's gonna want to have. People are gonna be too busy using Huawei phone. Like all of the anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist young people that are pissed off. All of the remaining journalists and people with any kind of basic virtue, any of the remaining Voltaires, that's to say, speaking the truth to the corrupt power of the entire U.S. and Western world, they will all be getting Huawei phones as fast as possible. And until then, they're gonna be keeping their devices far away from them, right? So the United States neoliberals, right, the masters of the universe, the grand chessboard players, right, the Nancy Pelosi, Victoria Nuland. Right, Nancy Pelosi, Victoria Nuland, George Soros, Tony Blinken. They can't blow up every leftist and every truthsayer and journalist at once like they wanted to, right? I know Tony Blinken would love to have just blown up Scott Ritter. He already tried to have him arrested off a plane. He took him off a plane. They've been trying to, right? They're out there, right, saying anything Russian. African streamers are now Russian agents, right? They're trying to lock everybody up. But what would have been more efficient would be if the U.S. could just blow every single person up that ever said anything true simultaneously. But now that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen now because Israel wasted their biggest bomb, right? Which is the cyber mass planetary mass assassination, mass targeted assassination bomb. Israel already wasted that bomb, right? On little children in the marketplace, blowing them up. Right, blowing up nurses and doctors that are going to do a heart surgery, right? So Israel absolutely blew it. That's normal because the West is run by morons, idiots, clowns, and spoiled brats that were born with silver spoons up their butt, like Tony Blinken. The thing is, Tony Blinken, before Tony Blinken could blow up the entire anti-imperialist, anti-colonial left world up in the West. Right, before Tony Blinken could blow up all of the black and indigenous people of color, right, who are speaking truth to power. Before Tony Blinken could blow up the whole Green Party, right, and the transnational oligarchic elite that run the United States, right. The APAC half of America's brain is jumping the gun and blowing. Right, it's the APAC half of the U.S. and Western brain is hacking because all of the Europe is all run by the U.S. is all run by so this split schizophrenic multi personality disorder, right? The sub personality that is APAC, right, is really it's dying faster. So it's just jumping the gun and throwing out all the kitchen sink of all of its weapons, right? So it's blowing up it's actually because the transnational corporate elite, the billionaires, the global billionaires together, it counts for more power and more total wealth than APAC, right? But APAC is like it's small but rabid and near its death knell. Half of the Western hemisphere of the splintered brain, right? So it is hacking, right? It's chopping off the legs of Apple. It's chopping the arms off of Samsung, right? It's blowing itself up. It's just like let's just shoot everything we've got. Let's deploy like some kind of super biological virus we've got somewhere in Fort Detrick. Like let's just shoot all of our biolab weapons out there. Let's like they openly, right? That's what they've been doing for the last year. But this is just the pager detonation is like let's pull our Iron Man bullshit out. Let's pull our Iron Man, right? Let's pull out Iron Man weapon in Spider-Man Far From Home, because we see Marvel Avenger movies are just US and ISRAEL admitting what they want to do, right? Except they claim that Iron Man is gonna, like in the movie Far From Home, right? Iron Man like hacks all these drones, hacks the satellites, and has like a whole swarm of drones and satellite lasers and hacked cars attack a school bus, right? And that's like super cool, right? But that's just like what the US and ISRAEL want to do to everybody that doesn't follow their hegemony, right? But now it's too late because Israel already did the Iron Man bullshit. Israel already fired the Tony Stark, mega attack. I mean, obviously they could do other things. They're still gonna try to ban Africans from talking, like African Stream, banning indigenous people like Redfish or the Red Nation. Tony Blinken is on the TV going, X and Y and Z, they're all Russian agents, and so we gotta turn off their accounts and stuff. So that's why I hope I don't get too big, because then Tony Blinken would be like, Silver Spook is a Hawaiian Russian agent or something, and you gotta turn off his account. So but the more they do that, see, this is the thing, right? The more that you weaponize your tech, right? And I made this point on Wednesday. The more that you weaponize your tech with these pager bombs, I want to get that one on the screen, so let me just jump down there. Yeah. This is a better image. The more that you weaponize your tech, right? The more that it will push people away from it, right? Each time you use one of these cyber attacks, right, more people are gonna want to buy Chinese, Russian, Iranian products in electronics, especially Chinese, because they're just the number one. They are the mega story on the planet, right? They make the vast majority of all the best everything. They already make most of America's stuff anyway. So they're just people are gonna buy non-U.S. control. The thing is that the parts that go into all of the Apple, Samsung phones comes from China anyway, right? But the U.S. controls the final assembly and they have control over the final product and the infrastructure and the software and operating system of Apple, Samsung phones, right? The other Target refrigerators, the products that go into the smart cars, right? That are all weapons. Your car is a bomb, by the way. So we're gonna need BYD cars so that the United States doesn't, when you go to your Free Palestine protests, right? You better hope that Israel doesn't hack your car and drive it into the nearest river and lock the windows, and then just set your car, lock you in the car and set the lithium batteries. Because what you can do is, if lithium is lithium is a very volatile element, right? And so in the batteries are known to catch fire easily. All that APAC has to do, you go to Free Palestine, or you go to Strike or something that really, you go to the Stop the Ukraine War rally. All they got to do is send a message to your car, cause it to overheat your lithium batteries, lock you in the car, and burn you alive. So nobody's gonna buy a Tesla, nobody's gonna buy a Ford, nobody's gonna buy a Samsung, Apple, if they can help it. Number A, they're already overpriced. B, they're supporting GENOCIDE and PALSTINE. C, they support giant capitalist Western corporations. Why would you ever do that? D, they will kill you. So they can, and E, they're already spying on you, right? It's not even really. I mean, I guess it's worth mentioning. I used to mention it a lot. People talk about Signal. People talk about all of these encryption technologies. If you're in the U.S. or in the West, the ISP, any technological device you use is a spying device. Everything is being spied on at all times, right? And obviously that shouldn't be the case, right? But that cannot not be the case in an absolutely corrupt, completely broken, crime enabling machine called the United States and all of its allies, right? The Europeans don't have sovereignty at all. They're all controlled by the United States. So all of the Comcast, the U.S. government, that's supposed to regulate and stop the spying is itself the spying agency. There is no possibility of not being spied on. For people who are like all about the privacy, if you really want privacy, you have to like do things like in person. I mean, obviously, who exactly can get access to what you're saying, right? Like obviously, it's mostly like CIA and the U.S. A DC, a Wall Street, and transnational oligarchy elite and APAC. That will, the two halves of the unhinged Western brain, right? That's APAC and the rest of the corporations and billionaires. And one of those, and military industrial complex, one of those, like, they can get it, but it's like obviously if you it's like a local police department or different agencies can't get it. NYPD has everything you got because NYPD is with the rabid half of the U.S. brain, which is APAC. So, and they're all trained in, isn't real. So, they don't really care, right? This is the thing. But there's no such thing as privacy anywhere in the West. Europe is a joke, right? Europe's not gonna have anything to share, right? Europe's gonna be too busy, freezing in the dark, chopping down the last tree in the German Black Forest, right? So they're gonna have to rename Black Forest ham into Black Ash ham, right? Because there won't be any forests in Germany because we have chopped all the trees down to prevent everybody from freezing to death when they have no energy this winter, right? So that's going to be interesting. So they don't have to worry about privacy because there won't be any trees in Germany to hide behind, and Europe and Britain, they won't have any people left, right? To eavesdrop on. They'll just all be dead. So anyways, so that's great for them. If you're in Europe, I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for your loss. I know that was probably a mean joke, but also they got major problems there. But anyways, so this is really coming back to the topic, right? The pager and walkie-talkies and weaponization of the electronic devices attack was really stupid because, another factor in that is that they could have continued to use the pagers as spying devices. They could have continued to use, right, whatever U.S., Taiwanese, Hungarian, European, American, corrupt, toxic supply chain products, right, that they still had access to, right? They could have kept spying with them, right? But now that they've blown up little children and doctors and nurses and people in their kitchen, right? They've only further enraged. Hezbollah means like the servant of God. Like these people, they're not intimidated. And I see like there's so many videos I've seen that nobody is intimidated by this. All you have done is further enrage, and further, they created like, and Hezbollah is more powerful than Hamas. They've created many more, just more serious and more dedicated Hezbollah members. The Lebanese government, right, the whole entire country has now said we will give full credence, full support to Hezbollah, right? So Israel hasn't, and part of it is like Israel. What the goal is, Netanyahu wants World War III because if the massive war ever dies down to anything smaller, then he could get in trouble. And so in one sense, like everything is happening because one toxic neuron, Netanyahu, in the rabid half of the U.S. and the collective West brain that is APAC, right, is this one neuron in the diseased, sick brain of this half, right? The isn't real half, is making that whole half set itself on fire, so that the whole brain will be dragged into a war with Iran and anyone else, so that one neuron in the West's brain, Netanyahu, can stay out of jail. And that is such a fitting end to the United States and the failed Western colonial capitalist imperialist white supremacist project. Right? It's a very fitting end because it's ridiculous. It's hilarious. It's hilarious in a horrible gallows humor sort of way. But it's also exactly the way that, like, I couldn't have written it better. In fact, I wish I had written it. In fact, I did kind of write it. There is an unhinged warmonger, a Netanyahu-like character, right? Who he's like a Doctor Strangelove-like character in Neofeud 2, who tries to blow up. He insists on starting nuclear war inside of the space palace at Versailles, where all of their bodies. It's like a space palace at Versailles / the CIA headquarters, right? / Davos. All of their richest people, all of their vaults full of quadrillions of dollars worth of gold from a lassoed comet to corner the solar system's de-dollarization and reverse that. That's how they stop that in Neofeud. The world of Neofeud 1 is multipolarity is emerging, but China and Russia get blindsided by mass nuclear war, plus the U.S. leader like lassos a golden comet in space. This is it's alternate branching paths that comes out of 2013. And he steals like 1,000 or 10,000 times all the gold ever mined on Earth by catching a Kuiper Belt comet with like ion thrusters and then bringing it, right. And they build this entire floating palace in Neofeud 1 out of all the gold, like all more gold than all of the world's gold combined. And it's like an upside down like Anuit Coeptus inverted pyramid with a floating palace at Versailles on top, filled with Greco-Roman fluted pillars and paintings of billionaire American and European and Japanese and Indian vassals, right? And that's the Neofeud palace. But one of the, so it's it's a metaphor for everything that is the West. But one of the vassals, what the military commander, right, General Walker Coke Jobs, decides, I'm too bored, so I'm gonna start a nuclear war inside the palace. And that's Netanyahu. I'm gonna start bombing. I'm gonna start blowing up our own palace because, I'm just, I'm bored, and also like we gotta get these damn Rusky Chaikam, Vietnalian, these red indigenous, these red Indian something. We gotta wipe these. We gotta wipe the red commies out, and red in the sense of Native Americans, also red in the sense of communists, which is they always have been tied together for the West, and the colonizer world. So in that sense, like I did write the present into Neofeud 2. It is already there. And if you just tune in, this is a screenshot from Neofeud 2. That's like I'm simultaneously doing. I was thinking I might just do another Q&A like Neofeud 2, developer update. But I was like, I'll just talk about the pager thing and then kind of do this. But if people do have questions about Neofeud 2, feel free to throw it. I will answer your questions about Neofeud 2 because the interactive stream seemed to be something interesting. If you don't have to necessarily just be Neofeud 2, but in case you're wondering, I'm like finishing out the ending of the game right now. I'm like, yeah, all of the clicking, all the gameplay of the game is done. It's just like the ending sequence that I'm working on right now. Yeah. Also, what's up to Kevin Crady? Call is coming from inside the house, indeed. Anyway, let's take since I already went there, let's take a quick break and look at this screenshot. Okay. So this obviously, so for all of our retro game players, if you don't know who Silver Spook is, okay, the Silver Spook logo. So I don't know if you can see this, but the Silver Spook logo, right? That was basically it was like a high contrast like semi cubist like semi cubist Van Gogh inspired. I forget what I was thinking exactly when I made that logo, but it was like I wanted to make like a kind of like high contrast, easily recognizable, right, two color, right. That's why logos are often like two tone, version of Silver Spook, right. Silver Spook is this guy right here. So Silver Spook, the character is from and this is a brief we're gonna take a brief excursion over to ModDB. Silver Spook was a character, or is a character, in Terminus Machina, which is a game in which I predict the future. In Terminus Machina, is it benevolent God AI running the world, leagues of evil asshole masterminds managing Clockwork Earth from the shadows? Nope. Just lots of buggy paramilitary drones blowing up schools, incompetent elite wrecking the planet with endless financial crises, mass unemployment as workers shove robots out of offices into endless bread lines, run out of bread in bankrupt states, and 60% of robots. Anyways, so if you haven't heard of this, so this is Terminus Machina is where I basically predicted the future 15 years ago. But one of the main characters in Terminus Machina is Silver Spook. This is a drone strikes and AI powered robots. This is the Motorola pager bomb, but with legs. Right. This is the autonomous drones that are already blowing people up in the Middle East, and in the streets of Lebanon, and definitely in Palestine. Or Silver Spook. Yeah. So Silver Spook was a character who was the main character of this. Silver Spook is a homeless hacktivist socialist revolutionary trying to jailbait iPhone 9 factory worker slaves in North San Fran while dodging AI-powered drone strikes, firing Hellfire missiles at his forehead, and robot police officers. So why are there drone strikes in San Francisco? Well, that will be answered when you play the game. As the trying to jailbreak and wearing a silver trench coat because it helps to thwart the infrared cameras of the drones that he is in the process of hacking. So Silver Spook is canonically now he was a former police, military, special agent, CIA. Silver Spook is in part reference to the fact that, spook as in like a intelligence agent spook. That was a term for that, right? It was somebody who was working for the NSA, the CIA, one of the alphabet soup agencies. So Silver Spook is he was working for the police or programming for police, military, or big tech companies, which are all the same thing ultimately. That's one thing that the Motorola and Apollo pager bombs show, right? They're all the tech, big tech, right? Silicon Valley, big firms, and the military industrial complex and global imperial warmongers and capitalism and imperialism mongers are all the same thing. So Silver Spook was an and in Neofeud too, he's described as an ex-CIA agent that he's known to the Neofeudal class, and so he survived all of that. And he didn't survive; he actually dies. He dies at some point in history, but comes back as he is like beheaded while running a world-class war revolutionary action in Ameribank City, which was it is a razor wire walled drone patrolled enclave in what used to be California, right? Whereas California collapses and the U.S. balkanizes, Silver Spook like runs a revolutionary like cyber attack full spectrum run on Ameribank City, as the Gates Walton, the Clinton Bush, and the Koch Jobs families are gobbling up all the real estate, and the Clinton Bush family, right, buys up all of America at pennies on the dollar in the U.S. implosion. And so basically, it's basically like BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. I already predicted that. So and as Silver Spook is trying to hack into basically the mega BlackRock exurb, and there's like ground guerrilla militias of socialists, communists, Black Lives Matter, Palestinian, Free Palestine activists. Things are heated up in the United States so badly that there's like military insurrection against the mega enclaves, right? Silver Spook like gets in, he like hacks the servers, but then he gets caught and he gets executed and beheaded. And they put his head on the pike of the Transamerica Pyramid, and his body is like sent back to the leftists of San Francisco. So like all the Free Palestine people like get Silver Spook's body back, and they say, and then it's kind of like blowing up the pages, except they like use like it's more cyberpunk. So there's like a laser whipped Yakuza cuts his head off or something. And but Silver Spook lives on in the server. He gets digitized in the corporate servers of BlackRock. I'm sorry, the Clinton Bush family's server. And so he gets digitized, and his personality is held there for study, right? So they can stop any future revolution, any kind of person who might potentially see or start some kind of uprising inside the what used to be the United States is dead already. So in Neofeud, there is no United States, right? There's Coastlandia, and then there's like the Gates Walton multiplanetary conglomerate, and then there's like, you know, there's like these three families that just control this complete chaos, no man's land, balkanized hell world that used to be America. And then but Silver Spook is held in one of their vaults, and then Princess Sybil in the wreckage, in the rubble, they get his personality out, but then the ghost Silver Spook, who is now a digital ghost, he's like the Dixie Flatline and Neuromancer, he gets stolen out, and but all of the left gets destroyed when the United States plutocracy, or the former U.S., turns into a wrecked, absolute collapsed warred wasteland. The rich like nuke their own cities, right? So LA gets nuked because it's basically overrun with upset population that are getting radicalized. New York gets nuked. They nuke all their own cities, or they bomb it so badly that it's unrecognizable. They lift themselves off of the earth, right, into floating palaces. And but Princess Sybil happens to discover Silver Spook inside the holographic disc, the 38.5-inch floppy disk that contains Silver Spook. And then Silver Spook starts whispering in ear, and so all of the Egalite Cooperative and all of the events of Neofeud are actually inspired by Silver Spook, who is like the trillionaire princess whisperer, right? Being like, we have to, which is a metaphor because everything that's happened good in the world is I did it because I'm the anti-CIA. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways. So, but that's some of the backstory on who Silver Spook is. In case if you ever heard of Terminus Machina, actually, you know what? I'll play this real fast because actually, I'll play the trailer real fast because it is pertinent to this particular stream. Because it is what is the hacking yourself to pieces is what is happening, right? And Terminus Machina is a game, right? As I said, about, right, that I made 15 years ago, that is about the West and the imperialist capitalist world hacking itself into little pieces, right? Blowing itself up, right? Cyber warring itself catastrophically badly. Like, it's literally in the description, like accidentally blowing up children, right? Blowing up schools with buggy drones, right? Buggy CrowdStrike, wrecking yourself with endless financial crises, right? Shooting yourself in the foot with trade policy and sanction and self-defeating sanctions. So anyways, where's the intro? Okay, I'll play the intro.
The hot, crispy filet of fish with soft steamed buns, tender, flaky fish.
I apologize for that McDonald's interruption.
Audio log.
Oh, shit.
Day Silver Spook. Audio log. Day 7, District 10. The sun drags through the smog of America's prison factories like obese whales defecating into the rust-red sky. Robots have shoved 80% of workers out of their offices. The jobless plummet into the street without a safety net. The bread lines are out of bread as governments across the globe are bankrupted by bailouts and tax cuts for the super rich. Austerity, rioting, world-class war immolates the planet, and machine militaries exterminate all resistance, herd the survivors into sweatshop prisons, force them to make smartphones, and power the very Gestapo robots that oppress them. Fearing for their heads, trillionaires bunker into Pluto-claves, private resort cities run by AI and defended by fleets of autonomous drones, armed with Gatling railguns and tactical nukes. It's the best of times for the 1%, the worst of times for the 99. That's where we came in, HexGen, decentralized network of activists. Sure, our DDoS attacks on mega corporations like Coca-Cola and Agrogen have tanked their share price 20%. Our high-frequency trading strikes have slashed the bloated bellies of giant predatory banks, forcing the redistribution of wealth to hemorrhage down to the people. Hell, we've even managed to jailbreak gulag worker slaves and subvert control of enemy robo-soldiers. But being a hacktivist resistance fighter doesn't always pay rent and put food on the table. Cornered in the San Fran necropolis by Cybersec, my stomach revolts at the gutter moss I'm forced to scrape from the sidewalk, infected with genetically engineered plagues and sour with acidic pollution. I'd start a rooftop garden, but it's illegal to grow your own food. Hell, with today's 3D fabricators, everything from TVs to cars to organs can be printed in your living room. Except the copyright cartels smart bomb all green shoots of self-sustaining community, afraid of competing startup civilizations taking root, cutting into their monopolies. Marx understood that the system contains within it the seeds of its own destruction. Perhaps we are that fatal exception. The halting state. The city on the hill is crashing. But how far must it fall, and what, if anything, will be left to reboot?
Anyways, yeah, it's fitting because the CIA did assassinate Kennedy because he was trying to slow down a war with the other side of the Cold War. So it's very very similar time to today, right? He didn't want to go after Cuba and Russia as much as the transnational capitalist imperialist elite wanted, and so they killed him. And so Donald Trump also, he's being shot at. In part, he's not necessarily being, he's not obviously not being shot at by the Chinese because they don't miss. As Carl Jha, our friend from the Silk and Steel podcast, aptly points out, it was a Chinese sniper. If it was Chinese that actually wanted him dead, then he would be gone. It's two misses. This is incredibly incompetent. It's like hacking yourself to pieces because like you don't even know you have like 1.2 guns. There's like 120 guns for every 100 Americans, but nobody can shoot them properly. Like America won 0 Olympic medals in the most recent Paris Olympics, despite having the most guns, right? So they can't even shoot themselves properly. Americans are shooting themselves in the foot, but they can't even shoot themselves properly. My God. Well, how far must it fall, indeed? Let's not this disclaimer. That's not a recommendation for anyone to try to shoot anybody. I'm just saying that there have been 2 assassination attempts on a U.S. presidential candidate, and it's not even, he hasn't got it elected yet. But why is it happening? Well, it's part because it's stochastic. It's stochastic TERROR, which is there's being pushed out there a narrative of increased it's also the United States media is hacking its own so-called democracy. It never was a democracy, but it's definitely hacking the stability of its population to pieces. Right? And there's extreme levels of anger, rage, and people not even taking the United States election, the United States politics as a team sports, which would be bad enough, right? But it's like even the democracy is falling apart. The political situation is falling apart because people are just just absolutely hating, right, uncontrollably the other side. There's no serious discussion happening in the United States, right? And that is encouraged by the media, right? Where you have liberal and conservative media, which like a lot of them they know each other, they all work together. But for whatever reason, right, they are simply to try to get elected, assaulting, attacking, and encouraging, they're saying things that are encouraging direct attacks, military, direct, violent, lethal attacks on Americans and Americans on candidates, right? So it's interesting that it's 2 attempts on the Republican candidate. It's 2 attempts on Donald Trump already, right? There's no known attempts on Biden or Harris, right? I guess partially Biden is already technically, legally, and scientifically dead. His brain is non-functional from like 25 rounds of reinfections of COVID and just being a senile old warmongering ghoul. But Harris hasn't had any attempts. So it's interesting. Which kind of tells you that. There is good reason why it's Trump. There's good reason why there's more pushed. There's a favor of Kamala because Trump has said. Trump has said, and he I think it was like John Mearsheimer and Jeffrey Sachs, the 2 geopolitical analysts. Sachs was actually worked in Eastern Europe and with Russia to try to help after the fall of the Berlin Wall, what he thought was going to be, some kind of building of a new peaceful world and economic mutual development. That Jeff is kind of naive sometimes like that, but he's talking about like Victoria Nuland, who was like one of these operatives. Actually, before I continue with the Victoria Nuland story, I just want to say thanks. I'm not sure how to say her name, but the person that starts with the N. Thanks for playing Terminus Machina if you enjoyed it. Victoria Nuland was in the Bush administration or in the Clinton administration's cabinet, destabilizing things, causing havoc and chaos in Ukraine, and trying to basically do whatever she could to privatize and liquidate Russia's resources and corrupt that government. She was in the Bush cabinet. Victoria Nuland is also a member of the Project for a New American Century, a known Doctor Strangelove-esque neocon. Doctor Strange. If you haven't seen Doctor Strangelove, go watch it. It's the true story of the United States. The United States, the West can only be a comedy. There's no honest, serious drama about the United States. It can only be comedy. It can only be tragic horror comedy. Because that's what the West is. It's nothing but that. Anything that doesn't have extreme nonsensical ridiculousness, right? Like Burn After Reading is that's more closer to home than anything else, right? Idiots walking around accidentally, stealing CDs in DC, people like punching people badly in the face, right? Hurting themselves, getting themselves killed, right? Because that's what the U.S. is doing. That's what the West does, right? Get itself killed. It's a bunch of paper tiger morons, but simultaneously causing havoc and death and destruction, while being amazingly bad at whatever their job was supposed to be. Anyway, so Jeff Sachs, so Victoria Nuland was in the Biden cabinet. Sorry, she was in the Bill Clinton 1990s cabinet, causing havoc and chaos in with Russia and Europe. Working with George Soros to try to make whatever aggression they could to try to take all the trillions of dollars of Russia's resources for U.S. private Western mega corporations and billionaires. And then in the Bush era, she was there again. She was in the Obama cabinet after Bush, and was making the coup in Ukraine against the democratic elections there in the Maidan coup with Germany and France's support, right? And actually, Merkel and the French president have later admitted they always knew that there would not be democracy in Ukraine, but they wanted to buy time so that the Ukrainian far right extremists that we now know are Nazis that have been, they've made billions of dollars convincing Western left and liberal and progressive people to throw money into the blue and yellow flag, rescue the Stepan Benderites fund. That didn't even go to, a lot of it didn't go to Ukraine at all. It just went straight into the pockets of people to buy more private jets and Maseratis and Porsches and Cybertrucks. With the little dog, the little Neofeud blue and yellow flag cutesy Pepe meme dogs, right? These were all the global fascist people that the liberals support. And Victoria Nuland was directly part of the project to create that global international electronic network. A lot of what like Gamergate, a lot of the worst of the online right wing, a lot of the 4chan, Reddit, online fash, the red pill crowd, a lot of that stuff like comes straight out of not Victoria Nuland herself, but like this project to create a global these digital online fash program of spreading this racism around the world, increasing that, especially in online gaming spaces, and I had to deal with this as a Steam indie game releaser. I remember there's so much racism and just outright Nazi level rhetoric all over the gaming space, like even like RPG forums and stuff. I just I didn't want to be anywhere in these spaces. Like on Twitch, it was just full of just slurs everywhere. But that was part of a global project to increase global fascism, which benefited the United States in Central South America. It benefited them in India, and all of these far right extremists worked together, and then and it also benefited to draw people into Ukraine to fight proxy wars for the United States as well. So like many American, French, British, just random European people, right? If they put money, or for the liberals they put a blue and yellow flag, but for the conservatives, people went. The guy who tried to assassinate Trump went to Ukraine to fight on the side of Nazis. I'm not even joking. So anyways, and that was hacking everybody's brain, right? In a Johnny Mnemonic sense. That was part of hacking the entire West's and much of even the not West, even India's brain. That's how Modi got into power. Is them using Apple and Samsung phones, U.S. phones, on Facebook. Did you know that if you're in India, it's the world's most populous non-democracy, also called the Western affiliated country, and India has 1.4 billion people, and majority of them are in poverty. But even with no money, they give you free access to a phone only to get on Facebook, so that you can consume pro-U.S., pro-capitalist, pro-imperialist, and pro-Hindu nationalist, like right-wing, like the India version of conservative Republican ideas, and you can just mass consume that, right? And then get riled up to be a proxy against China, is what the U.S. and the West want, right? So that's hacking all. I mean, hacking India's brain might be the most successful thing, if you can call it a success. I mean, it's not a success. It's the destruction of everything good, and the West is a cancer of the planet. But so that it's the biggest tumor that the West has managed to grow, which is not all of India, but like the India that has been brainwashed into that, because it's the most populous country. The United States wants the to the extent that there is any long-term planning, which there isn't. The CEO of Cisco said India will soon outpace China, and India will be the leading country, and we'll make trillions of dollars blowing the rest of the planet up with Indian-made bombs and Indian-made soldiers. Indian soldiers brainwashed by our Facebook. The Cisco CEO didn't say that, but he did say that. Like that's there's a lot of the United States that's what they want. Bill Gates wants that. Bill Gates is in India right now saying you have to use my American corporate crops, American Microsoft. Get more Microsoft, get more CrowdStrike in your India, right? What India needs is vitamin C, vitamin CrowdStrike. Right? Vitamin explode your entire infrastructure, kill millions of people in hospitals. The next time you accidentally shoot yourself in the foot with your so-called antivirus software that itself is a virus. Anyway, okay, I'm lost in that woods, but those are all ways that you hack yourself. But and hack that I think that seems, some people think that that's going to be a legitimate strategy as the United States, Europe, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Korea, South Korea collapse. Or if Japan and South Korea, if Korea can get out of the U.S., like all of Korea, if Korea can be no longer divided by the ongoing U.S. imperial occupation of Korea and become one Korea and get out of the U.S. vassalization and U.S. Western capitalist colonialist control, if Japan can make right with China and get out of that, join the multipolar world, join BRICS, join the SEO, then they have a chance to get to but they're still stuck and people in Japan are trying to pull out. They're anti-imperialists trying to pull out of the imperial dying order, but as the collective West dies, the Australia, New Zealand, that whole block, right? Again, everybody who votes with the United States in the UN, if all of those die, which they are, they want to try to transmute. They want to do like a being John Malkovich, like tunnel into India and like build the next imperial superpower through that. It's very misguided and foolish in many ways. Unfortunately, India's there's a large chunks there for historical reasons that this is it's seen as partially viable, right? But India cannot approach what China has done without massively reorienting. I mean, going through the actual rooting out of and dismantling and being on a socialist path, because China had a communist revolution and they had a completely different path, and their growth is based upon, because they're saying, well, India is growing fast now. It's not going to grow at that rate for a long period of time, and the growth is not actually. A lot of it is overinflated the way the United States' GDP is overinflated. It's not actually going to the masses there. India and the U.S. have that same problem. They have huge inequality, tiny plutocracy at the top. The richest family in India owns 10% of the entire 10% of GDP in its own wealth. It's like the United States. So anyway, but this is not a global economics video. It's supposed to be about hacking and cool stuff. Anyways, but hacking yourself to pieces. So the point of the Victoria Nuland bit is that like her continued push, right, and continued attempts to maintain proxy wars, and also it's not just her, but she's just one. She's like she has been at the forefront. She's one of the deep state or the blob, just like the DC players that have been inside of the last 30 years of the United States government presidential administrations, right? She has been in the ear, right? Blinken has also been around for this much of this time. Like Blinken was he was more junior in the Obama, but he was around, and he was he was not like a senior player like he is now, but he has been around, like fomenting proxy wars, pushing the military industrial complex, right? Believing in these this Dr. Strangelove Dr. Strangelove ideas. What was that guy's name? And you can go, there's a post called there's an article called Haas China 1, which documents this. Not that one. No, not that one. Haas China 1 is by Kishore Mahbubani, which is also worth reading. But yeah, the U.S. is set in this one. It documents the actual origins. U.S. is set on a path to war with China. What is to be done by KJ No. Yeah, that's his name. Andrew Marshall, Andrew Marshall was referred to as Yoda. He was the Pentagon's oracle, directing its secretive internal think tank, the Office of Net Assessment, for 42 years. Part of an elite group of econometric thinkers at RAND Corporation. RAND Corporation is the U.S. Like Air Force affiliated think tank that like games out nuclear war. It games out biological total war. It games out like what a U.S. Russia war would look like, right? it plays like role-playing games and tabletop games were created. Like 4X games are basically like knock-ons of Western apocalypse masturbatory fantasies is basically what this stuff is. And the Rand Corporation is one of the entities that is tasked with gaming out war with China. Like, what would the economic blowback be in the South China Sea if we start to launch missiles into Chinese ships in the Taiwan Strait? What will the blowback be here and there and other way? Now, obviously, these assessments are not very good because I mean some of the people are trying their best, but obviously you have to assume the problem with these assessments is that the United States and the collective West are run by idiots, right? So you have to have like a Coen Brothers film game, right? But the thing is, these games are too structured for sane people, right? These war games don't take into account a massive, obvious criminal psychopath like Netanyahu, right? Starting wars and keeping wars going against the United States military and U.S. and coalition forces militaries against their interests, so that he could stay out of jail, right? But any war game has to take into account the most ridiculous, stupid wild cards, like blowing up pagers, right? Turning the entire world against U.S. tech, so that one criminal like Netanyahu can stay out of jail, right? But the thing is, these war games, they don't take. That's why they always fail. And the U.S. the projections keep dropping, right? The U.S. was supposed to be overtaken by China in 2035. By 2035, then it was 2027. Part of it was Trump, but I mean, it keeps dropping because the Rand Corporation, right? In the U.S., the deep state, so-called think tankers, right? What they do is they think about how to sell tanks, right? They're the real tankies. They think, how do I sell more tanks, right? Because they always call black in the Western left, they call black and brown people tankies because they can't say the N-word anymore, basically. But the real tankies are the people who think about how to make a news report about a possible Russian hack that could sell more tanks, right? So that liberals and leftists in New York and the UK, right, can start worrying about how we need to put more money into the military so we can sell some more tanks, right? That's what the tank. And then all your tanks get taken by Russia anyway, right? Just like your 155 millimeter shells. So, anyways, but Herman Strangelove Khan, right? Daniel Ellsberg, remember he didn't drop the bomb. He stopped the dropping of some bombs by leaking, right, to the press. He was a whistleblower in the U.S. intelligence that showed that the United States planned to nuke China 60 times, almost did several times. The United States is the only country that has used nuclear weapons. That was against Japan. Although if the U.S. and the West keep screwing around, right, Washington, D.C., London, and Paris, and Brussels could all become parking lots very soon. So we'll see how that goes, because they have hypersonic Mach 8 missiles the U.S. cannot intercept, that not even nuclear ones, that produce like multi-kiloton. They produce like multi-Hiroshima scale explosions. They're not even nuclear. Russia's arsenal. They can reach every American city and every European city in the drop of a hat. And if Victoria Nuland and Tony Blinken, right, these Dr. Strangelove, again, right, these people that are hacking the West to pieces, they're hacking, right, they're hacking themselves to pieces because they are actively trying to give the Storm Shadow long-range missiles to strike deep into Russia, right? They're doing like Dr. Strangelove is being played out right now, and everybody's like, it's like the West, most people don't realize what this even means, but the Russians are not. The Russians are serious about this. They're very much like, we're not going to tolerate that. And it's kind of like, it's very dangerous, right? I mean, if Washington, like, the thing is, most Americans don't give a shit if Washington D.C. gets hit, right? 90% of Americans, it's like statistically 90% or more of Americans have a negative view of the federal U.S. government and the Senate and the Congress, the president, right? Most of the United States thinks either Trump or Biden is president. Nobody can agree in the United States on who is president. But what they can agree on is that they hate the United States. with some small except if any American likes something about the United States, they're mostly conservatives, right, or some liberals. But what they like about the United States is some past version of the United States that doesn't exist anymore. So if so in one sense, but obviously that's extremely dangerous for the world, because then you'll have two nuclear superpowers, going to war. But this is where the United States, and this is where like Mearsheimer and what's his name, Jeff Sachs are talking about, which is like, there is a big there's a big chunk of the United States, right, that all buy these ideas, right? Literally his name was Strangelove because Dr. Strangelove is a comedy, but it's actually a true story, right? Herman Kahn was the person who was in charge of trying to figure out how to deploy nuclear war, how to use like carbon-14 or some kind of weaponization of it, or what the blowback would be, and how we could kill 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million people, right? When Kubrick was making Dr. Strangelove, he was horrified. He actually had to tone it down a little bit because of how unhinged the United States, right? And you see a little bit of that in Oppenheimer, but Oppenheimer is too nice. Oppenheimer makes the West look like a collective, the most well-collected, like Buddha calm, like saintly figure compared to what it actually is, right? But the United States has been planning to kill 10 to 20, 50 million people, maybe 200 million people, to maintain U.S. capitalists, to maintain billionaires' profits, basically, to maintain a system of colonialism and capitalism, to keep Africa, Asia, and Latin America subjugated, right? The U.S. just released recently a new document. The U.S. military just released a new document that said war with Taiwan should be pushed for, and we estimate that we could kill 60, 10, 20, 50, 60 million Chinese, mostly Beijing. We could level the revolutionary hub of Beijing and the Communist Party of China. The United States is still talking about blowing up hundreds of millions of people right now, right? Just to maybe we could make the world, we would have less Chinese people in the world. Just to have less Asians in the world. And maybe we could damage the Communist Party. And maybe the crops would grow. Maybe the Chinese rice would be so radioactive that they would have more birth defects. This is the job of DC, where this is what the US and the Europeans do, because they all work together. They sit around and they go at 300 grays per grain of rice, right? Or at X milliliters of radioactive waste per kilometer. Given the meteorological patterns, how many Chinese jellyfish babies will be born? How could we crush the Chinese? How many cancers, right? How much leukemia, right? How much like PFAS, right? Like the Americans poisoned their own troops with PFAS so they could test to see what happens if they dumped it in other countries, right? Like at what is that? Like in Hawaii and Okinawa, where they dump it in our water, and then they dump it in Camp Lejeune, right, to test it on you, and then they take a bunch of anthrax and bioweapons out of American biolabs like Fort Detrick and then spread it around the country, and then just to see what happens, just to see how effective anthrax is. I'm just kidding. They don't do that. But anthrax and bioweapons were snuck out of Fort Detrick, where they made a furin cleavage site that is basically identical to the super contagious evolution that's on supposedly Chinese created COVID-19. The United States already had anyway. But so that's the entire game. The Israelis are also there's a document that showed that Israelis were planning to try to create some kind of pathogen that is tailored to Arab DNA, so that it seeks the deoxyribonucleic acid specifically of Arabic genetic people with genetic material that is actually Semite, right? Because ISRAEL is they are mostly Caucasoid. They're like 97+% of all of so-called indigenous ISRAEL. They're not, but they had to hide their own ancestry.com 23andMe results because they're not native to they're colonizers, obviously. It's but if we infect the world with a Slavic or Chinese mutated version of COVID plus smallpox plus the Black Plague, that's carried by avian migratory birds, right? Or potentially like we drop it in with the nuke, right? This is what the United States, this is what they pay people money to do in the US, right? Is to think about this shit, right? How many, like, if the Chinese have, X tens of millions of children in, X years, right? How could we cut the Chinese children down by nuclear irradiating all the rice in like the Sichuan, Fujian, and Xinjiang region, right? If we nuke Xinjiang, could we reduce the world's solar and renewable technology? Because Xinjiang region has over 50% of all of the world's photovoltaic material, the sand, silicon, the panels that are made, comes out of that region. Could we blow up Xinjiang, blame it on the Chinese government, claim the United States is like, could we bring a B-52, or like, could we bring a set of the last 10 working F-35s before they all break, because the military industrial complex is about making products that don't work and then stealing money without doing shit, just like in Ukraine. But losing wars. Can we bring the last 15 working F-35s, nuke Xinjiang, blame that on the Chinese, and call it a Chinese genocide of the Uyghurs, nuclear genocide of the Chinese by the Uyghurs, with the destroy the global solar market, spoil all the crops so the Chinese starve to death and get a radioactive waste damage, just like we did to the Vietnamese and the Koreans, and then you see how unhinged, like, just thinking like that is? But that's all that the U.S. leadership does. That's what neocons do, right? That's what Herman Strangelove did, right? And it goes into what the detail I'm saying. That's just the surface, right? It's everything. It's like if we can convince the Americans of exit. Like if we like black out the sun. If we basically science fiction, dystopian science fiction novels is like the tamest U.S. and Western leadership discussions, right? The worst is the worst is like the worst of their scenarios are unpublishable, even as dystopian fiction, because it's so sick. Nobody would read it. I've read some of it. It's fucking disgusting. It's like you can't read it because all it is just like it's almost banal in its unhinged depravity. Right? It's actually the most debased thing I've ever read. It's like some of these fucking military projections. Don't read them unless you never want to sleep again. And this is what the United States does, right? Victoria Nuland is one of these people, right? She was tasked with setting up, like, she was one of the people that made sure that the U.S. had bioweapons labs to specifically engineer super viruses to target and kill off Russians based upon their genetic markers. Like based on their DNA, engineer super viruses in Ukraine. There are 56 labs. She even admitted to it on camera on C-SPAN while being interrogated by Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio tried to get her to walk it back, but you see, like, people like that, strange loveified, the true America, right? That's people like that, right? It's the sickest fucking possible humans you could make. I mean, Netanyahu is like America and Europe light. I mean, this is European history is just these people, right? Like the people that invented slowly cranking out your intestines from your stomach while you scream in agony, right? These are who the Europeans were, and still are. And the latest evolution of that is people like Victoria Nuland. And so she couldn't even, but you're so blinded by like just thinking about how to torture and kill and subjugate and crush, brainwash. All that you do all day is that, right? You don't even remember what it was like to be a human, either making mountains of money or making mountains of money while killing and slaughtering and torturing the entire planet. The environment is a weapon to be eradicated. I mean, these are people killed. They designed plans like slaughter every single buffalo, right? Like poison all the children, right? Like dump the radioactive radon into certain British waterways. By the way, everyone in Britain was and has been and is still experimented on at all times. They've acknowledged it's dumping radioactive waste in certain poor communities in the UK, like Stratford upon Hull. You're going to have 10 milliliters of radioactive waste today, and let's see what cesium-19 does to the neighboring community, right? So the Irish, they tested and perfected mass starvation on the Irish so badly that that's where, like, the whole concept of satire, right, and the whole concept of like the dystopian fiction, like Jonathan Swift's, right, A Modest Proposal, right, is like, which is, you know, a proposal that we should have the Irish eat their own children as they slowly starve to death, right? Like what the U.S. is currently doing to countless countries, Yemen, Palestine, African countries. You know, it makes those. Madeleine Albright, when Victoria Nuland was in the cabinet, was on record saying, yes, it was great starving 500,000 Iraqis to death because that's what it takes. Albright was another one of these people, right? It just, right. But they perfected that technique of starving 500,000 Iraqis to death to try to make them scream until they do whatever America says. They get their country overthrown, get a color revolution, install a puppet dictator. But the United States the West perfected that on the Irish, right? Or one of the places. Then they did it to the Indians, 27 million in the Bengal famine under Winston Churchill. But like that is the way that the British think. That's the way that the French think. That's the way that the Europeans think, right? Is if we cut the caloric intake of the Irish to 250 calories per day, how many days would it take for the bones, as the society disintegrates and they begin to eat each other? How can we use that to our advantage? How can we gaslight the people that were starving to death, little children and elderly? How can we use that to our advantage by accusing them and defaming them in their own eyes, by gaslighting them and saying that they are terrible managers of their own resources, right? This is West. This is why the West it's civilizational cancer. The Greeks, the Romans, the entire project, the Europeans, the United States, the whole thing is absolutely. It's dying. Thank God. You know, it has to hack itself to pieces. Like every time the United States and the West, to bring it back home, right, set off these pager bombs, right, CrowdStrike themselves, right, sanction the Chinese Huawei phones, semiconductors, solar panels, electric vehicle, BYD electric vehicles, the best in the world. They are hacking themselves into pieces now, and that's great. Every time the U.S., you know, schizoid APAC / transnational corporate brain takes out scalpels and chops each other up, right? By blowing up the pagers, that causes this massive planetary blowback against all Western technology, right? That is the West taking a scalpel and cutting off the tumor that is itself, right? It's hacking it is hacking the neoplasms inside the brain tissue of the collective human system, right? Of the human species, and just chopping out the West, right? So it's really great. If the U.S. keeps on, and we should expect more and more serious terror attacks. We should expect more atrocities coming forward. They're going to do something stupider and bigger, possibly involving getting London, Paris blown up. You know, I mean, who the hell knows? You know, blowing up, you know, blowing up Donald Trump's family or something. You know, they could try all kinds of things, right? One or the other presidential family trying to assault, like blowing up a bunch of leftists in America, blowing up Free Palestine protesters, right? They're going to try something really stupid. And then when that happens, it's only going to further hack them. It's going to chop off more bits of the tumor that is the United States, the European, their entire white supremacist colonial capitalist system. Not their genetics, but their like the system that's absolutely sick, right? As I've already described. I mean, it's like, it's like, you know what people say, I almost can't believe like how many babies do I have to watch every single day getting ripped to pieces with their brains fall out. It's almost so unbelievable, right? And you watch people that are smiling, like Kamala, like Biden, right? Like Blinken, like European officials, right? Your university professors, right? Your family members. You watch them smiling while the babies are, right, saying, let's all have brunch and let's have lots of joy. It's almost so unbelievable, right? So it's so barbaric. It's so ridiculous. It's like you almost can't believe it, right? That's actually one of the strategies, right, that the West has concocted, is that when you do an atrocity, when you do a genocide, when you do something horrible, right, do it in such a unbelievably barbaric way that humans almost can't even believe. So that nobody believes you when you talk about it. Like, that is actually the strategy. Now, if you're like native people like me, we knew this the whole time. But if you're not a native or African or Asian, or the Chinese know this very well because they've been suffering this kind of crap the whole time. The Chinese are the ones the United States is constantly talking about. Should we kill 200 million or a billion? Right? The Chinese are the number one people. They're like, how can we make the United States? I think they wish that COVID-19 specifically. If I don't have the receipts on this, but if I had to guess, the United States will probably, and it certainly has been. We know that it has been, right? But the United States wishes that COVID-19 specifically targeted Sino DNA, like Chinese DNA, so they could wipe out all of China with one fell swoop of a virus, right? So if you are the Chinese, right, under the communist revolution and the socialism with Chinese characteristics in a counter-imperial multipolar world, leading BRICS as CEO in the future of humanity in any kind of normal, civilized, human, non-sick, non-tumorous way, like the United States and the collective West, you are constantly the preoccupied by the sickest people, the strangers of the world, right? You are the constant thought of how do we kill you all with viruses, with electronic cyber warfare, nuclear warfare, radioaction, dirty bombs, psyop, color revolution. How do we kill you all, right? So they know what it's like. That's why they have very strict regulations. That's why they have an internal ecology, right? They have an unhackable internal ecosystem of inputs, the semiconductors, the metals that go into make them, the silicon, the metals, the production of the semiconductors, putting them onto chips, incredibly complex stuff. America tried in Arizona to do a TSMC, a Taiwanese semiconductor manufacturing facility. They couldn't even get it started, right? Because A, the United States is incompetent. B, the United States is racist, and they didn't want to listen to the Chinese actual engineer experts. And D, giant crypto AI shrimp Jesus generators working with Sam Altman on OpenAI. That's the other 1/3 of the schizophrenic Western brain, is they're trying to make AI generated shrimp Jesuses using all the water and power of the remaining shreds of the United States in Arizona, and it was taking too much of the water that needed to make more 25 boobed 7-fingered fucking kitsune waifus so that a handful of rich white guys could jerk off, right? Because that's all that they do is make crappy porn, and then everything falls apart, nobody buys it. And actually OnlyFans is more profitable than all the generative AI combined times 7. So yeah, it's catastrophic. It's absolute failure. And the U.S. cannot make, even if it wanted to, the United States and Europeans, even if they wanted to, could not have an internal semiconductor, computer chip, phone, car, and other electronic device, Wi-Fi, 6G. They don't even have 6G. They're not even getting close, right? China is already a generation and a half ahead of the West in AI supercomputing. It's not even, it's supercomputing with the quantum computer. It's not even close with it's up to like a quadrillion years for a Chinese, for an American or European computer, quantum computer to compute what the Chinese computes in 1 second, or like less than like in a millisecond, right? So every year, every 6 months, the U.S. falls behind, and the West can never catch up. They can never. Thank God. The saving grace is that there is no possibility of the United States and the Europeans, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Japan, and India, and under vassalization ever catching China and the BRICS. It's finished, right? That's the good news, right? The question is, how long will it take for the dying, corroded, corrupt, lesion-laden brain, the dying tripartite triumvirate of evil, U.S. corporations, military, industrial complex, and APAC, to sever itself into little chunks of star-spangled cancer? That's the only question. Because it's gonna keep doing that, right? And it's we have to, so it's kind of like, it's not really, what do people do about that? It doesn't matter what you vote for. Nothing is gonna change in the United States. As John Mearsheimer pointed out, as Mearsheimer did point out after Jeffrey Sachs, it's a recent clip with Jeffrey Sachs and John Mearsheimer talking geopolitics. He said John Mearsheimer is one of the premier U.S. based analysts of geopolitics and statecraft, and he said like, well, there's two parties in the United States. There's basically been no difference. Donald Trump is slightly different because Donald Trump has said that he was going to pull the U.S. out of wars with Russia in the last election. He got elected. He did not succeed at doing that. His cabinet was Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, and some of the biggest Trump, whatever he said he was going to do, his cabinet was all staffed by Strangeloves. And and things did not change, and they continued imperialist war-making policies, and the Biden had obviously the same policies that got the Ukraine war started, and Nuland was in that administration. She got pushed to the side a little bit because of how badly the Ukraine war has failed to make any actual progress. Much of the United States is run by people who are obviously believed that they might actually be able to crush Russia, balkanize Russia. But they're smoking their own copium, right? They're smoking their own lies, and so they believe the nonsense that they could actually win this war, despite. But the U.S. and the West, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, is basically is like a never-ending preschool for giant babies that don't know anything, and especially nowadays. And that's coming from adults like in Russia and China, not in the United States. That's what because that's part of why they can't do diplomacy. In the 20th century, they had Strangeloves, but they had some people that were actually capable of doing some diplomacy. There were some people, right? And then they killed them all, like John F. Kennedy. So anyways, they shot them in the head for being too good at actually trying to slightly, not that Kennedy was a perfect candidate, but he was trying to ratchet things down a bit, and so they blew him away. And they also blew away Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. The last racists in America killed Martin Luther King and Malcolm X for saying imperialism, capitalism, and racism, the three prongs of the of evil that are the plagues of our country. And then they shot him in the head. So I mean, shooting people in the head is, this is why, like, in some senses, the multiple assassinations are just like, it's very American, right? When somebody says something you don't like, just shoot them in the head, right? That's how democracy works, right? Democracy is when you don't like somebody because you listen to Western so-called education and media, and then you shot them in the head. That's democracy, basically. But anyways, keep on sidetracking myself, but I spent a lot of time. I didn't get much sleep in the last 2 days. I was staying up all night working on Neofeud too, so that's part of why. But so yeah, we're gonna keep having these events. If you do vote for Donald Trump, what Mearsheimer was saying is, yeah, Donald Trump said he was gonna stop. He's gonna pull back on this warmongering. He didn't succeed at that. If Trump gets voted in again, right, the question is, will Trump be able to, he says again, I'm going to, on China, on Middle East, Trump is 100%. Let's blow up all the Palestinians, right? Let's keep going and blowing people up in the Middle East. No anti-war there. Nothing really on China, just like more same old policy, at least what he's saying, right? And on the Ukraine-Russia front, he's like, maybe we need to ratchet that thing down. We need to get out of that, right? If he gets elected, will he be able to achieve that? And Mearsheimer is like, I would not bet on him being able to, right? He's just like one guy. The president is irrelevant. Like, if Donald Trump is like 5 seconds away from getting an actual successful, like, if the United States, has like it has like a 5% batting average for shooting people and actually hitting them, right? It's very normal. It's kind of like, the U.S. when it launches a bomb, right? Usually it hits a preschool or like a hospital, right? Like what it's doing all over the Middle East, what it did in Afghanistan, right? How many actual combatants, right? How many enemies did the U.S. actually succeed at hitting in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, right? The actual soldiers said, I never actually met a single enemy I never met a single actual. I think Mike Preisner was somebody said I was deployed in the Middle East, and I didn't we didn't actually hit a single actual enemy of the United States. We terrorized civilians. We beat up Arabs. We knocked in doors. We drove tanks into people's front yards, smashing their garden. We shot 16-year-olds inside of random Afghan people's households, right? Just for looking at us weird. We created more enemies than we ever actually killed or fought, right? So the United States missing with 2 assassinations is just normal, horrible marksmanship, right? But this is actually British and the French. All of them, they're only good at thinking up and half-ass executing on the most horrific things possible, right? Like colonialism itself is just a giant, massive crime, and so in that sense, right? So we should expect more of these kinds of things, right? More complete screw-ups, right? More pager bombing fiasco, horrible events, that's gonna be so you gotta watch out. What you can do is support Black and Indigenous people of color in anti-capitalist, anti-colonialist, anti-imperialist actions and movements, because as the U.S. balkanizes, we're gonna need more of that. Will the United States survive? Will the United States survive 2025? I don't know. I would not bet on there being a United States, any kind of, well, there already isn't a United States, right? As I pointed out in the previous videos, half the United States believe Donald Trump's still president, and half the United States believes Biden's president. That's still the case, by the way. The United States is technically there isn't a country there. It's a civil war. The United States government is technically illegitimate under that sense, because there has not been a actual determined president. Biden is making decisions, supposedly. Biden also isn't even freaking functional in his brain, so I don't know if it counts as a president, right? The United States does not have a government. The United States is already balkanized. The United States has already hacked itself into pieces in that sense. But I don't think that the U.S. will survive 2025 without a more formal hacking, Like Texas, Florida, the West Coast states, they talk about seceding sometimes. I don't think they would formally draw a new line there, but again, the already half the United States doesn't believe that Trump is president, and the other half doesn't believe Biden is. In the next election, that's only going to accelerate. That's only going to get worse, and it's going to be more firmly drawn lines that are going to cut the United States into little hack itself, right, geographically into littler and littler pieces, right? And another, as I point out routinely, many young people, right, don't even identify as Americans themselves. They're less and less identifying as Americans. I'm a native Hawaiian. I don't identify as American. As Haunani Kitra said, we're not American. We're not American as native Hawaiians. Hawaii is one of the least American places, even under international law, and I have entire streams and long threads that go into that. But even the young people in America are less and less and less going to identify, and so that's also hacking America into pieces. And if you think the economy is bad now, wait until the Apple and Samsung and Microsoft and Facebook, Tesla, Ford orders start taking a bigger unprecedented nosedive, because of how few people are going to be buying American products now, right? You thought your economy shit was crap last week. We're not even seeing the total ramifications, because again, there are so many people that are saying, I'm not going to buy any iPhones. I don't even want to be near an iPhone anymore, right? Just across the spectrum, people across the world, US, Europe, around the world. I don't want to be near any American or Western products anymore. Again, Huawei's orders for phones are overflowing. Right, they're having double, triple. And Huawei is massive, right? Huawei is a huge is producing phones. Hamas uses Huawei. Lebanese, actually, most of Lebanon actually is using Huawei already. It's just only some people that were using these older pagers, right? It's part of why it was pagers, and a lot of it was pagers and it was walkie-talkies, is because Lebanon is full of Chinese air conditioners, Chinese mainline made air conditioners, made BYD cars, Xiaomi. They have Huawei. Russia is full of Chinese electric vehicles, Chinese appliances, Chinese phones, Chinese everything, right? And only more so now in Europe, right? Europe wishes it had Huawei. Germany has like 14.4 dial-up in Berlin. I heard it's like not exactly that, but it's like early 2000s internet speed. Germany and the Europeans, like the people wish that they had like super advanced Chinese Star Trek level technology, but they're still living in the past, right? So if you think your economy sucked before, right? You're in for it's only going to get magnitudes worse now, as the entire planet hyper accelerates, reorienting itself away. And again, that's why I said like it's about supply chains. The popping pagers is gonna break supply chains, and continue the cyber severing in a sense of like cutting off the wires, and the invisible radio waves and Wi-Fi waves and satellite waves, right? All of the cellular airwave telecommunications, phones, in cars, in your appliances, your smart grid, your Nest, your home, right? All those tech appliances, right? That was part of mass surveillance, mass control, and mass money making, right? Selling these appliances themselves. That is going bye-bye. That is going down the toilet. And the countries that the U.S., of course, the West is going to try to hold on to it as much as they possibly can, but that's not going to be in the medium term. That's not possible, and in the short term, I don't think that's even going to be in any serious way possible. So, and we'll all be safer. That's in one final note, because 1:45 I got to go. In one final note, don't forget, so Silver Spook, you talked about all this technological problems and hacking and all these problems. Actually, let me go through this image real fast. So, in Central Intelligence, we have the SPQE, we have our Greco-Roman American eagle with all of our NATO and Japanese imperialist flags. We have we have the communist revolution against the U.S. capitalist space Versailles fight. We have all the countries cooed. Where is it? All the countries cooed by the U.S. before World War II on this map here. We have the new planet with cooed versus invaded countries. So when you run the CIA, you got to make sure you have a map of the new planet. As you can see, they're very incompetent, just like now, where they have not successfully cooed any countries on this new planet they're in. So they haven't cooed or invaded any of these countries. So they're doing a very bad job. The Victoria Nuland of this planet, she's got to get fired and you got to get a replacement. We have the U.S. Death Star. We have the Call of Colonialism. It's a game that you can play to get forcefully recruited to the U.S. military and get brainwashed while shooting at brown people with American guns and American tanks. Lifestyles of trillionaire and famous to prop up prosperity doctrine, wealth worship, and make sure we get more liberals being manufactured in the West to maintain our system of capitalism. And of course, you get a brand new waifu when you join the utopian military. So that thirst trapping was the most recent semi-successful U.S. military recruitment by convincing young people in the U.S. and Europe and Ukraine that you'll get like a bunch of hot girlfriends with sick outfits. You'll get a bunch of baddies if you join the military. Didn't really work, but it was one of the attempts. So that's straight up that's the program. And also, don't forget to buy your Captain Utopia Attack of the Sylvanons movie tickets and Liberty chips, right? With fun shapes for kids to learn. Kids need to learn. Kids need to have action figures to learn to love the empire that they're in, and so that's why we have. Anyways, so this is a random Neofeud 2 screenshot. But and the last thing we do before we go is, in case you didn't know, Oprah should stop promoting genocidal war criminals like Kamala and land back her thousands of acres of real estate empire on our stolen Hawaiian land, because causing our homelessness, exacerbating wildfires, and generally being a colonizer. So Oprah recently interviewed Kamala, where they both laugh maniacally as genocidal, imperialist, murderous ghouls, Oprah and Kamala together, representing the worst, the black women, sheepdogging all of women and black and people of color into the arms of the great planetary cancer. So good job, Pied Pipering good people into hell Oprah, and also get the hell out of Hawaii. And also, here's an entire thread. I recently made a bunch of posts this week, so I just want to share some of these. Did you know that before the United States banned our language and culture, we Hawaiians had free, quality health care? Today, the U.S. corporations are cutting nurses' benefits and locking them out of hospitals as patients suffer to profit the rich. And this is a recent march over a lockout. So, as I said, you have to hack yourself to pieces. It's good the United States and the West are hacking themselves to pieces because they are sick. They are tumors. They are neoplasms of sick lifeways. I mean, as ideas, not as individuals, but as their systems need to be destroyed. And it's good that they're chemotherapying themselves, because we don't need this kind of thing anymore, where nurses are locked out of the hospital because the nurses in Hawaii don't have medical care. Think of how unhinged. This is one of those. It's so unhinged. It's so barbaric. It's almost unbelievable, right? How can you have people who are putting IVs into people's bodies? How can you have nurses that are like tending to people with fevers, with COVID-19, people with serious injuries, right? They're putting packets of blood. They're helping people all day long, working their butt off as nurses, right? In emergency rooms, in clinics. And the nurses themselves don't have health care, right? This is like the oubliette in France, right? Another invention of the Europeans, where they would put people that they didn't like in these underground cages while the kings, the queens, the lords, and the ladies, right? The hereditary aristocratic capitalist colonizers that run the West, the Europeans and the French included, as they would eat their giant spit roasts and all of these tables of brioche and cake and all of this beautiful food, right? They'd have these huge banquets, and underneath them, they would have people underground, like political dissidents, that like Voltaire, who somebody who asked for basic freedom and human rights and food for the Jean Valjeans of the Les Miserables of France, right? If you spoke against the king, they might put you in the oubliette, the place of forgetting, where they would torture you to death as you listened to people and smelled the smell of cake. You smelled bread, you smelled like soup, and you smelled and you heard the crunching of pork and beef, right, and croissants, right, and you smelled the food, but you slowly were starving to death, right? This was the form of torture to death, right? Torturing people with the thought and the smell and the sound of food as they slowly died, right? And so this is what the U.S. does to nurses in Hawaii. It is watching, treating people with IV needles, right? Repairing broken bones, right? Giving cancer medication to rich people, right? Like installing the remdesivir and putting the IVs and putting, wiping the foreheads of sick patients, right? Giving care while you as a nurse are slowly dying, right? So the United States has done the medical oubliette to Hawaiian nurses. And now because the nurses asked for basic dignified treatment, the United States did you know the richest person in Hawaii, the highest paid person in Hawaii, is a CEO of a healthcare company? It's the CEO of Kaiser Universal Death Care System. I'm sorry. American Private Healthcare System. The nurses are forced to watch people get care as they die of their own cancer that they can't get care for. Nurses are treating people with broken legs as they are walking to work on broken toes. Nurses in Hawaii can't even go into the hospital to treat people because the United States illegal occupation capitalist corporate system with their Kaisers and their private mega drug companies and huge hospital private wealth acceleration funds are locking the nurses out. People are suffering and dying in the hospital because of this, right? And this is who the white world is. This is what whiteness is as a constructed identity for settler colonial capitalism in the United States. This is what America is, right? It is cancer. It is death. It's a death country. As Hanani K. Trask said, it's a death cult, as critics of the empire have said. It's why they shot Martin Luther King, for describing correctly what the United States is and what the West is, right? So, the U.S. is not going to give anything, right? We're going to keep suffering and dying as long as it continues to exist here in Hawaii, that's for sure. because the Hawaiians, our system is the complete antithesis of this. Hawaii had the world's highest literacy rate, 98%, world's first universal healthcare, renewable hydropowered cities, near zero homelessness, actual racial equality. The U.S. invaded and destroyed our system, man, our language, and culture, turning us into a slave plantation. So this is the actual Hawaii before, as I just in case people who don't know this, but you probably do, but in case you don't. Faced with the preconceptions about Hawaii, the Europeans exclaimed, the island nation is ahead in literacy and enlightened countries of Europe are behind it. So immediately the Europeans began this concocting of a way to destroy all of Hawaii because we were doing just, equal, human rights, freedom, actual, right, mutual prosperity, right, civilization, when the Europeans were only doing barbarism, right, starving, figuring out ways to starve people to death, bake people to death, right? Nuclear irradiate people to death. Or in that time, they didn't have nukes yet, but they would have if they could. Install catastrophic viruses to target only Indians, only Chinese, only brown or black people, or only Russian, right? Or in Israeli's case, only Arabs, right? So what they did was they tried to concoct a way to annihilate us because we had things that average Americans wish they had, right? Established in 1859, Queens Hospital provided healthcare at no charge to people of Hawaii. After illegal military occupation, the U.S., there was a concerted attempt to defund and destroy the system. Today, Hawaiians have some of the worst outcomes. Electrified country of Hawaii, powered by renewable hydro turbines and affordable mass transit. System of trains, trolleys, and ferries allowed individuals to commute even from neighbor islands like Maui to the city of Honolulu. You know, people are the U.S. APAC funded NYPD is like blowing people away in the subways for a $2.90 fine. Did you know we had free mass transit? We had free mass transit way before New York had any mass transit of any substantial kind. Inter-island, we had ferries, trains, and trolleys. It was free. You know, it was or very low cost. It was easily affordable for everybody in Hawaii to commute without getting shot, right? Or being so broke they can't afford a basic fare, right? But the United States, you know, it's 130 years later. The United States can't even get people to like survive what little mass transit they have, and the mass transit is falling apart, full of homelessness, drugs, poverty, and it's creaking. It sounds like it's gonna explode at any second, and it's super low speed. It's super inefficient, and it's over fucking priced, right? So the United States and the West had to crush Hawaii because we beat them at everything because we're just not completely filled to the brim with sickness like Western culture is. And this is what they installed after that. They installed plantation feudalism of oppressed people, Hawaiian and Filipinos, working for a white capitalist oligarch in sugar plantations and pineapple plantations for less than starvation wages, living in a 5 to 10 foot shanty with 20 people living in a tiny little box. This is the desirable outcome for all places. The United States. See, if the United States could figure out how to nuke everybody back into plantations, that's what they would do. If the U.S. and the Europeans could nuke the world back into slavery and into hell, that's what they would do. That's what they plan to do, actually. I don't think they're going to get away with it. But one of the U.S. plans is to cause catastrophic chaos, warfare, fallout, you know, like the Fallout video game. But that Fallout video game is just U.S. policy. Nuke 8 billion people and have the richest survive, come out, and then rule the wasteland, right? Reestablish colonialism amongst the non-cratered, ash-glassed wasteland, like 100 years from now. That is like a literal plan. There is like very specific plans for that. That's why they all build bunkers, right? The billionaires build bunkers because they're trying to get ready for when the U.S. and the West blow the whole fucking planet up, or when they try to anyway. They're very stupid, so they won't succeed probably. Many Americans think that Hawaiians live in huts prior to colonization. The U.S. actually deindustrialized Hawaii. Before 1898, we already had electricity, mass transit, railroads. The city of Honolulu was lit by nationalized renewable hydropower before the White House had electricity. And, you know, this is, I'm not going to go through this whole thread, but just in case, you know, the new one was this one. We have the non-capitalist, non-imperialist, socialist Hawaiian system should be in place with our universal healthcare, but instead what we have is our nurses being locked out as they walk on their broken toes. Nurses that have like serious ailments, treatable illnesses, they can't afford their meds, and they can't even go to the hospital because they don't have no healthcare. That's the greatness of the United States. and the collective West. One more. And then we'll go. The abominable U.S. empire doesn't push large-scale fusion or solar for the same reason that they crushed our free Hawaiian hydroelectric system in the 1890s. Fused deuterium and tritium is the two elements. They are easily found, and deuterium is very, very plentiful in seawater. And so the amounts that you need, it's anywhere on Earth, anyone could easily do fusion. And so because atoms are abundant, like sunshine or water, the U.S. cannot choke countries that use it, unlike oil. And so this is why there will never be a U.S., European, Canada, or Australian, or any Western Green Deal of any kind. There will never be a Green West, right? A Green New Deal is like that is like a cancer cell growing its own chemotherapy. Because literally, right? If the reason why we don't have the hydropower, like I was talking about, we had renewable powered, 100% renewable powered Hawaiian cities in the 1800s, is because having the plentiful water or sun that can be found anywhere preempts the ability to starve countries and populations to death by lack of energy, which is necessary for economy, which is necessary for feeding, housing, clothing, etc. Right? So what they try to do, this is why Yemen is all solar, Chinese assisted solar. This is why any smart country in the world, so that's why China is rapidly retooling everything to all renewable. It's solar, because the U.S. cannot blot out the sun. And let it be known, the United States has many pages in its Dr. Strangelove Project for a New American Century documents trying to think through blotting out the sun. Like the Matrix, where the sun gets blotted out, it's not to stop AI overlords trying to kill Keanu Reeves. Okay? The plot to blot out the sun is if the United States' own contingency plans. The U.S. spent millions of dollars paying bloated DC and Western university salaries. So the people whose brains could have been thinking about inventing solar, working on engineering actual functioning grid, curing COVID, but millions of Western brains were spent trying to figure out how to blot the sun out in case the Chinese got solar or in eventualities like that. If solar becomes a mass adopted technology, how can we run this planet by blotting the sun out, right? Or how can we keep fossil fuel going by blotting the sun out, geoengineering, all this kind of crap? I mean, again, there is not like there's nothing that it's the U.S. and the West just have to, and they are going to disappear. They will no longer exist. You know, like Rome, like failed horrible barbaric entities like Rome and the Byzantines and the Nazis. You know, the American flag will mean the Nazi flag. It already does, but people will realize that one day, and nobody will wave it anymore. And everything in the white and the West and European world will disintegrate to nothing, because, like, I mean, literally, right? Fusion was a technology. The real reason they said, oh, it's too expensive. It's not too expensive. It's difficult, not too expensive, right? The problem is that fusion, if it is invented, gives abundant energy to everyone. The United States can't. If the United States could figure out a way to vaporize the entire ocean, suck the tritium and deuterium out of the salt seawater, then we'd have fusion. But the U.S. doesn't. The U.S. and the West and the Europeans and the colonial capitalists don't know how to vaporize the ocean yet. But I can guarantee you somebody's working on it. Somebody is making $270,000 a year sitting around in fucking Arlington, Virginia, thinking about how to vaporize the ocean or make some kind of chat GPT powered, chat GPT powered, NAFO dog operated freaking shrimp Jesus tritium remover to suck all the tritium, like little pellets of oil, out of the water. I swear to God, there's probably at least $1 billion worth of revenue. Just go to DC, okay? Go to America, okay? Go to some skyscraper and tell them you want to work on sucking all the tritium out of the ocean, okay? They'll write a science fiction movie about it, starring Tom Cruise, right? Like Oblivion, where the aliens in the upside down pyramids come down and suck all the water out. They'll write a movie about it, and then you'll make gainful employment in America, concocting a not even feasible plan to maintain hegemony by sucking the ocean water out of the world. and then sucking the tritium out. But you can make a lot of money working for absolute psychopaths that run the collective West. Okay, so just a pro tip. Are you a sick person yet with no morals, right? And you want to work for brain damaged people that want to blow the world up? Come to America and plan how to suck the deuterium and the tritium out of the ocean. Come up with a plan to use a black hole to suck the sunlight out of the sky so America can control countries. So America can control China by blocking out its sun. Okay? Just write a paper write a theoretical paper with lots of Greek symbols in it. And some jackass, Tony Blinken, fail son of empire, will pay you 6 figures for that shitty paper. Sit around and work in an office for like 8 years. You can get 8 years of $270,000 in DC. Just sit around and fucking jerk off to weird science fiction. Science fiction authors are like failed DC think tank bullshit authors, right? And that's what they do is they publish that for people to read, right? And it's called Oblivion, and it's called Michael Crichton. That's what it is. So people who design the worst possible futures so that the West can control the world. When it's a little bit too implausible, they just publish that in the New York Times as a science fiction novel. Anyways, I better stop before I go off the entire deep end. But yeah, that's why. But the good news is China is absolutely going to defeat the United States, and it's done. China's already won. China already has 120 million degree 1,000 second. It's beating the United States by 100-fold, and so China already is gonna. Even if China doesn't even need fusion, but China will get fusion, and the U.S. and the West are just cooked. They're done. So that's the good news. But you can still make money pretending like you can make money inventing a doomsday tech, right? That Iron Man, played by Robert Downey Jr., will probably threaten to use, right? But the U.S. and Robert Downey Jr. will play a Russian, Chinese, Iranian, using the weapon the U.S. actually wants to try to use to control the world, but it doesn't work, right? Because it has broken Motorola chips in it, and the Taiwanese are like, "I'm not gonna make that doomsday weapon," because like you're hurting our brand. Also, Taiwanese are like, "We gotta get back. Okay, we're sorry, China. We'll get back. We're sorry, rest of China. We the Taiwanese are coming back together because this U.S. have shown themselves to be absolutely deranged." Okay. Anyways, that's the end. Thanks for watching. I'm a little bit sleep deprived, so I know I was not 100% on my best straight line discussion today, but consider helping us out at ko-fi.com/silverspook. And you can also support us at patreon.com/Neofeud. If you'd like to help us to try to restore Hawaii under the U.S. colonial capitalist imperialist occupation, you can give us direct support to Patreon at patreon.com/Neofeud. I'm like way late. I got to get out of here. And you can also grab Neofeud on Steam. I talked about Terminus Machina. If you want to check that out, Terminus Machina is free on the Deus Ex. If you have Deus Ex, it's free on the ModDB site. You can get it, and it's a mod for the Deus Ex 1 game. It's a 24-year-old game. So yeah, but it's a good stuff. I just watched like 3 separate movies that are set in the late 90s or early 90s. So Deus Ex came out right in the early 90s. It's right there. Anyways, you can also follow at SilverSpookGuy. Get Neofeud on Steam. You can also get Neofeud on itch.io for Windows and for Mac and for Linux. It's also a game that is supports. You can get it without having to install Steam if you get it on itch.io. And you can also get Decolonators, which is a game about kicking capitalist colonizer butt. And of course, you can also get lots of other games on here. And of course, Woman is a book by Howley, who was raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity and is a critique of that culture in the eyes of Mary in the Bible, telling her own side of that story. So do check that out as well. You can follow at SilverSpook Games at wandering.shop or at SilverSpook Games at Mastodon.social, or both if you want. And you can also follow at SilverSpook Guy. We're also on Blue Sky. I'm on Blue Sky at in case you didn't get that update. I'm on Blue Sky at silverspook.bsky.social, and on Twitter, SilverSpook Guy, SilverSpook Games for my games related stuff. You can also follow Terminus C. Terminus Cyberstar is a speaking of Terminus Machina, this is the sequel to Terminus Machina, Terminus Cyberstar. And Neofeud 2 will also have crossover characters from Terminus Machina, as I've already shown. But this is another game that is being worked on by a small team. I'm the content director and the lead writer for this game. If you want to check that out, you can also follow Holly at Allergic at Allergic to Blue. Holly is, of course, moderator, writer, producer here. Married to myself, Land Back Free Hawaii, and of course sharing important information like that, because guess what? We're still inside of a BSL level 3 pathogen mass spread. So do mask that up to help out yourself and the world. And of course, don't let Dr. Strangelove and Victoria Nuland win. Don't spread this planet crossing viruses to everybody. Also, thank you to all of our Patreon patrons for your massive ongoing support. Hugely appreciate it. Without your support, it's hard for us to keep doing this work, so thank you so much for that support. I'm going real fast because I gotta go. Until next time, keep marriage shades polished. Be excellent to each other. Just so you know, right? So just keep your marriage shades polished. Remember, Silver Spook. Look at this. This is where the Silver Spook logo comes from. You can really see it. I don't know if you can see, but that's why he has this triangle eye. I was trying to make a Silver Spook the Terminus Machina character's face. Keep your mirror shades and your triangular shades polished. Okay, insert your floppy disks. As the Empire hacks itself to pieces, keep your cyber wits about you, and we will see you next time.